We are going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to the final In the Know webinar of the 89th legislative session. If you haven't joined us before, we hosted 4 quarterly webinars throughout the session, starting from November and going up until June. So we're excited to share with you today some of the key outcomes from the session for childcare. There were a lot of wins, so we're excited to share these today. You can use the chat to ask questions as we go along. So if anything comes up, feel free to put that in the chat as soon as you think of it, and we'll pause for questions between sections.
I'm not quite feeling myself.
And feel free to use reactions as well. If you love something, go ahead and let us know with a thumbs up or a heart or some sort of emoji. So my name is Jordan Brown. I am the policy associate here at Child Care Associates. You may see a lot of my work on the early ed canary space. I do oversee a lot of our communications there. And I'm joined by Catherine Davis, who is our Director of Policy. Catherine, would you like to say hello?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. And I am going to rearrange my screens just for a second. Okay, so our agenda for today, like I said, we're going to be talking about the outcomes of the 89th legislative session for childcare. Our 3 big buckets are childcare funding. You may have heard there was a $100 million infusion into childcare, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But there were some other pieces as well that'll impact childcare programs directly. And then we also have a section on governance and regulations, removing red tape for childcare programs, so that they can, work within the system more easily. And then pre-K and childcare got a lot of great new developments this session. So we're excited to share more about how public pre-K can interplay with childcare after this session. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's next. So what does this mean for childcare programs? What does this mean for the system? And how can you stay involved and engaged as things move? Okay, so here's some snapshots of what the before and after the legislative session happened. Before we started back in January, we already knew that childcare had been facing a lot of growing challenges over the past few years. There were incredibly long scholarship waitlists, which we're still dealing with today. You can see that 95,000 number for the statewide waitlist for scholarships. Programs closing or being on the brink of closing after COVID, and then the unintended consequences of public pre-K expansion on childcare programs who are losing a lot of their enrollment to in-district pre-K. And all of this kind of culminates into a lack of affordable childcare and creates a lot of difficulties for working families. So last session, during the 88th session, we had a couple of bills make it through related to childcare, but not like what we saw this session. This session, we really came in with a fresh outlook, tried to innovate with the bills that were being proposed. And so a lot of the organizations from the ECE advocacy community, those like Children at Risk, Texans Care for Children, Early Matters Texas, we all joined together and got creative with solutions to the challenges that we were facing. And Child Care Associates joined these groups to uplift innovative solutions from the work that we were doing in the field. So you may have, if you were at some of our webinars before, you may have heard about our pre-K partnership work, as well as the Tarrant County Prime Early Learning Pilot. And we really advocated and modeled statewide solutions based on those programs. And it wasn't just ECE advocates this year. We were also joined by lots of businesses, hundreds of businesses, nonprofits, philanthropic organizations, advocacy coalitions, government officials, especially within Tarrant County, and chambers of commerce, who all pushed for Texas not to just fund childcare broadly, but to also give tools to the communities to help stabilize and expand childcare in their local areas. So again, thinking innovatively. So like I said, quite a few of these were successful. We're going to talk about them today. There's definitely still a lot of work to do. We're not done yet. We're going to come back next legislative session and improve on these bills. But today we're going to share about what the wins are right now. Okay, so this is an update on where all the bills ended up. So as you can see, we've tallied up the approximate number of ECE bills that were filed this session, which was 76, which is a pretty good number. That's a lot of bills. But as you may know, a bill becoming a law, it has a very long and bumpy road ahead of it. So most of the 76 bills that got filed had no movement at all. So 49 got filed, and then they kind of just sat there. They didn't get a committee hearing. And a lot of the times these are refiled bills from previous sessions. Maybe legislators are just like, let's refile it and see what happens. So those 49 bills kind of got left behind. The next step up was getting heard in committee. So we had 4 bills that got heard in committee but never received a vote. And sometimes that happens because a committee just doesn't have all of the yes votes that it needs to pass. So they just don't end up voting on it, I guess, to save time. And then other times it simply wasn't a priority for the committee to vote on. So other bills maybe were more prioritized more. 4 of our bills didn't pass the first chamber, which basically means they did get voted in committee, but they didn't get all of the votes on the chamber floor in order to pass on to the next chamber. And 6 of those bills did reach that hurdle. They passed their first chamber, so maybe they made it out of the House, they got sent to the Senate, and then the Senate didn't move on it, or maybe it wasn't a Senate priority. So 6 of our bills did get through that, but they didn't end up receiving support from their opposite chamber. And then the final total, 13 childcare bills sent to the governor for signature. So this is our big number that we're really excited about. Obviously, there might be some other that impact childcare in different ways, but these are the ones that we were tracking. So to be sent to the governor means that the governor can either sign the bill and put it into law or veto it and basically kill the bill. So he has final decision-making power. And I do want to note that not all the bills that we're talking about today have been signed. So we are waiting on a few of them to actually become official law. So we haven't necessarily heard any rumblings of any vetoes, but so we're pretty positive outlook here. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. So I am going to pass it over to Catherine to talk about the major childcare bills that have passed this session.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, I just want to quickly echo what Jordan said. This session had, to my knowledge, a record number of early learning childcare bills filed. A large number passed, a lot more than we saw passed in the previous few sessions. So it really was a good relative session for childcare. So that is a testament to childcare providers. That is a testament to advocates, to parents, to families who have really stepped up and made their voice heard over the last several months to say, hey, legislature, we need you to step in and really support this sector because it's so critical to families and to our communities. So without further ado, Jordan, next slide. We'll go through the bills that passed. The headliner, as I'm sure you've seen in the news or you've heard, was that the Senate and House came to an agreement to add an additional $100 million into the Child Care Scholarship Program at TWC. This is not new money. This is unused TANF funding money, so temporary assistance for needy families. Texas traditionally does not use all of their TANF funding, and so they said, hey, let's dip into that funding that we're not using, and let's sweep it over into the Child Care Services program and use it to fund child care scholarships. So it is really exciting. It will fund about 10,000 additional child care scholarships. What that means locally is probably about 750 new scholarships in North Central Texas, around 670 new scholarships in Tarrant County. That's just based off of the traditional methodology, how TWC typically divides up that funding. So they will divide up that $100 million funding across the 28 workforce boards based off of the population size and other factors. So again, exciting. This is not something that will just be granted every year going forward. And I do want to emphasize that advocates and childcare providers and families will have to continue going back to the legislature year over year to continue asking for this additional funding until a more permanent funding structure is put in place. So it is a win. It will be wonderful for families over the next 2 years, but it's important that we continue to keep this front of mind for legislatures so that they're more likely to continue this funding source going forward, because it's not a guarantee right now. Some other exciting wins. SB 462 adds childcare workers to Priority Group 2 to receive childcare scholarships. These are childcare workers that work a minimum of 25 hours a week. They can be teachers or they can be support staff. It excludes directors or assistant directors, and you do have to be income eligible to qualify. So it's not every childcare educator, it's those that would traditionally qualify for a childcare scholarship. I think I saw Kelly Fontenot from North Central Texas in the call. Kelly, you don't have to come off mute right now, but she mentioned something on a previous call earlier this week that North Central Texas has actually had childcare workers in their local priority group for a few years, several years perhaps now. And because there's so many kids on the wait list, boards are often not getting to that local priority group, that priority group 3. So by bumping childcare workers up to priority group 2, it's gonna enhance the likelihood that children of childcare workers get pulled off the wait list faster. So that's exciting. And then HB 2294, this is attacking reimbursement rates for childcare providers. So this creates the flexibility for local workforce boards to reimburse programs at the maximum rate, regardless of what their posted tuition rate is. So we know that when childcare programs have tuition rates that are perhaps lower than what they could be getting from their max reimbursement rate from TRS, that TWC can only reimburse them at whatever their posted tuition rate is. And so it often harms childcare providers who are serving lower income families who need to keep their tuition prices low in order to avoid pricing out those families. I do want to caveat, this is allowable. This is not required. It is allowable if boards can still meet their performance targets set by TWC. So it's allowable if they're not serving any less children. So we do have lots of kids on the wait list. It makes the trade-off a little bit tricky. So we will see. I know boards are really thinking about how they could potentially implement this, but it's not a done deal today. Kelly, I don't know if you or if there's anyone from Tarrant County Workforce Board want to provide any context. Feel free to come off mute if you'd like to. Otherwise, we'll keep moving. All right. Next slide. Governance and regulations. So Texas loves removing red tape. They love small government, and so there have been several bills that passed this session attacking just a regulatory environment that childcare programs are operating in, which we know can be cumbersome often. And so an exciting one is SB 599 that prohibits local governments from imposing additional health and safety standards on childcare homes beyond general licensing requirements. So examples of this are oftentimes you have a childcare home that's operating within a neighborhood with an HOA, and that HOA won't allow them to expand or operate at all. So this removes that requirement. It says that HOAs cannot impose those on family childcare homes, or if family childcare homes are moving from regulated to licensed, sometimes they might have a municipal ordinance that requires them to put sprinkler systems in their home, which can be really costly and often prohibit family childcare providers from expanding. This removes that requirement. So essentially, it's just saying that family childcare homes, as long as they are meeting licensing standards and requirements and health and safety requirements, they cannot be burdened by any additional local government requirements. And then a few others around governance. There has been now established a governor's task force on early childhood education and care. This is really intended to bring together leaders at the state level to really look at the childcare system, examine the structures and systems that make it so inefficient, and come up with recommendations to improve the way our early childhood system operates in Texas. What I am excited the most about this bill is it's recognizing that it's a recognition from the governor and from our state leaders that the work in childcare and the childcare system is not done. There's still a lot of room for improvement, and this task force is being convened again, the highest levels of government, to really think about where we go from here. I saw Kara's question in the chat. Will childcare providers be included on the task force? It is a small task force. I think there's around 10 members of the task force. The bill states that between 3 to 5 of the members must be representative of the childcare community. So this could be childcare providers, this could be nonprofit leaders who operate in the childcare space. It's a little bit broad. But it does have room for those that are actually doing the work to be one of the around 10 members of the task force. So it's a small task force. It's not super large, but I do think the fact that it's small will hopefully make it move a little bit faster. Sometimes it can be hard to corral a lot of people. How can someone become a member of this task force? That is a great question that we are also trying to figure out. Ultimately, it will be the governor appointing the members of the task force. So we at Child Care Associates are actually trying to learn, how we could potentially recommend leaders from North Texas or providers from North Texas to be a part of this task force. And we'll let you all know as soon as we know. Two other bills I just wanted to mention. HB 4903 is also kind of a governance related bill. This is bringing together, basically it's telling the leaders of the 4 agencies that oversee childcare, so TWC, TEA, HHS, and DFPS, to come together and look at all the regulations that are touching childcare providers that are coming down from each of their agencies, and then start to remove those regulations where they find that they are either redundant or unnecessarily prohibitive. Question from the Goddard School in Southlake: what's the difference between the governor's task force and the quad agency? This is a question I also have been asking. The governor's task force expires. It is a finite kind of term limit, and it's really intended at looking at like a redesign of the system. So in the committee hearing for this bill, there was a lot of talk around, should childcare be at TWC? Should we create a Department of Early Learning instead? Like, what are the big structures around childcare in Texas? Is I think kind of what the governor's task force, HB 117, is going to be focusing on. HB 4903 lives in perpetuity. So that is pulling together the leaders of agencies on a cadence basis to examine specifically policies and regulations that might be redundant or burdensome for childcare providers. I think there's hopefully going to be, and we're working on and having conversations around the quad agency initiative to really make sure that they are pulling experiences from the field and seeking feedback from the field around like, what are the regulations and policies that feel redundant or burdensome? Because, I think it's great that our agency leaders are coming together. They're the ones that can actually do something about it, but they probably don't have the best pulse on what's actually happening in the field. And so for HB 4903, I think it will be really important that they take public comment at every single meeting, and their conversations and actions are really driven by what childcare providers are saying needs to be looked at and potentially fixed. Yes, Kara, there's now an early learning council, a quad agency initiative, and a task force. Not to mention every single workforce board also has a childcare task force kind of group as well. So definitely reach out to your boards if you're interested in being engaged also. Okay, next slide. So pre-K and childcare, Jordan mentioned there is a lot going on in pre-K, specifically as it relates to childcare this session. If you have been watching the news over the last several months, you likely know that the governor's big priority this session was education savings accounts, otherwise known as vouchers. That did pass a few months ago now. And what is exciting about this, regardless of your kind of take on vouchers, vouchers have passed now, and so it was really important for us as advocates to ensure that child care providers were included as eligible uses for vouchers. They were not included in the bill that was proposed 2 years ago that ultimately failed, and they have been included in the bill that passed. So what this means is if you are a child care provider and you serve pre-kindergarten aged or kindergarten aged children, those children could potentially bring their voucher or their ESA to your campus if you are a TRS 3 or 4-star campus, NAEYC accredited, NAC accredited, or Montessori accredited. Pre-K children do have to be eligible for pre-K. So they have to meet the income eligibility or one of the other eligibility requirements to be eligible for state-funded pre-K. Kindergarten, any child in the state of Texas is eligible for kindergarten ESA. They are rolling this out kind of in a like cadenced way. So there will not be I think it's around 100,000 ESAs this upcoming school year or in the 26-27 school year. So it's not a whole lot relative to the population, but there is a chance that you might have a child in your center who is interested in bringing their ESA it receives an ESA and is interested in bringing it to you. ESAs will be around $10,000 per child and up to $30,000 for a child with disabilities. See a lot of questions coming in the chat. Is it only pre-K4 or can it also be pre-K 3? It could also be pre-K 3. Yes. I thought there was some kind of testing requirement to be eligible for ESA. Did that get dropped? Yes. So initially, there was nothing about childcare providers in the bill, and we were trying to figure out, okay, could childcare providers fall under this like private school category? But the private school category did have a testing requirement that is more common kind of in your upper grades that most childcare providers just simply don't need to offer. And so that initially was kind of keeping childcare providers out of the ESA conversation. They did add in a provision that says if a childcare provider, if a kindergartner or pre-kindergartner receives an ESA, they could also take their ESA to a childcare program that meets one of the specific qualifications that I mentioned before, TRS 3, 4, NAEYC, NAC, or Montessori. Would you qualify for ESA if you are Cognia accredited? That is a great question. We can do some digging for you, Tasha, and circle back on that. It is aligned to the pre-K partnership requirements. So if you are a program that's eligible to participate in a pre-K partnership, you would be eligible to take an ESA. But I'm not sure about Cognia accreditation. We can check on that for you. Let's see. Another comment. I live in an HOA home and my landlord told me the HOA didn't allow me to have children. I've lost 5 of my kids, only 2 currently. Where can I obtain this paperwork so that I can show my landlord? That is a great question. Thank you for flagging. So the bill that I mentioned that is addressing kind of the HOA issue is effective immediately. So we can send you the bill language. It's been signed by the governor. It's one of the ones that has already been signed by the governor. It's not waiting for signature. So we will send you the bill, and then we'll also make a note to follow up with you directly because there may be some sort of kind of formal verification that's also been developed at the agency that we could potentially get you a copy of. I'm sorry that happened. Okay. So ESAs, what can you do? tell your families to apply for ESAs, particularly your families that you think would be pre-K eligible. Here is a resource of an organization that's really doing a lot to empower both families and providers, private school providers, as well as they're starting to think about childcare providers as well. So encourage you to go to their website, sign up for their newsletter. They're really tracking and monitoring the ESA kind of evolution, and so they would be a good organization to just kind of keep tabs on if ESAs are something you're interested in for your program. Okay, next slide. The other development in pre-K as it relates to childcare was in the big school finance bill, House Bill 2. This did a lot of things. It most notably pumped about $8.5 billion of additional funding into our public school system, really addressing a lot of things outside of pre-K, children with disabilities, literacy, math interventions, teacher pay, teacher development, pipeline work. It did a whole lot. But it also did do a fair amount for pre-K partnerships. So, and pre-K in general. So one thing, it is now funding pre-K at a full day rate for pre-K 4 using the early education allotment. So it's essentially saying directing the early education allotment, that's an existing pot of funding, it's not new money, towards the additional half day of pre-K so that districts are being made whole for their pre-K funding, for their pre-K students. Additionally, it is requiring districts who engage in pre-K partnerships to pass through 85% of that funding to the Pre-K Partnerships Center. So right now we know a big challenge with pre-K partnerships is the math just simply doesn't math really for anybody. Districts aren't getting funded for a full day. They retain a portion. They pass through a portion to childcare programs. So childcare portions are getting a portion of half day to fund full day pre-K. It just wasn't making sense. So now we do have full day funding for the full day pre-K, and it sets a bare minimum for districts to pass through to childcare providers. They do need to retain a portion just to support the work that goes into maintaining partnerships on their end, but it is a win for childcare providers in that they are getting sufficient resources to operate a pre-K partnership program. Excuse me. There's also some language in there that restricts ISD expansion of pre-K if eligible childcare programs eligible for pre-K partnerships exist within their community. I think legislators have really heard the message that pre-K expansion has been harming childcare, and wanted to do something about that. And this is their attempt at doing that. So if a district, it restricts ISD expansion in two ways. One, if a district wants to expand their facilities, if they want to renovate facilities so that they can serve more eligible pre-K kids, they have to first go out and solicit pre-K partnerships. That's actually always been the law, but now they have to have verification from a pre-K partnership intermediary that they've, one, solicited those partnerships, and two, that the partners that they solicited would not be eligible to serve the pre-K kids. So it's essentially saying districts, if you're going to expand your pre-K, you need to engage in pre-K partnerships first, and you need to do so in good faith before expanding. The second part of this is for districts that charge tuition for non-eligible pre-K students. So in districts where you might have kind of a more middle income population, families who are not quite eligible for state funded pre-K, but also not super high income families, districts have seen tuition-based pre-K be something that they've looked into. I know there's 2 in Tarrant County. There's probably several in North Central Texas that provide pre-K to non-eligible kids at a discounted tuition rate. The HB2 is now saying that districts cannot do that if they have eligible pre-K partnership childcare providers in their district. Excuse me, there are still a lot of details to work out on this one. What does available mean? What does eligible mean? tuition-based kids are different from pre-K partnership eligible kids. So we're really watching the rulemaking on this one to just understand kind of what are the implications for childcare providers, what are the implications for families, what are the implications for school districts. It also, in helping with all this, is establishing pre-K intermediaries to support the development of pre-K partnerships across communities. This is intended to be kind of a third-party entity that will connect school districts with childcare programs, that'll do all that verification for districts and really help them set up pre-K partnerships before they expand their pre-K. And also provide kind of ongoing technical assistance and support to childcare providers as well. And then the last thing it did is it removed several regulatory barriers for pre-K partnerships. We know partnerships have been really difficult for childcare providers to engage in for a laundry list of reasons. But one thing that it did was enable non-certified teachers to teach in pre-K partnerships under a fully certified teacher. So it's actually a bill that passed last session, but this expanded this to all pre-K partnership teachers, pre-K 3, pre-K 4, and bilingual teachers or teachers of bilingual students in pre-K partnerships. And then it also just amended a technicality around building codes for childcare programs. Childcare programs to engage in partnerships were having to go get their building code from the city changed to match the school district. It was this big long thing. And essentially this bill is saying like, you don't have to do that anymore. So that's good as well. And then one more thing, I know I'm talking a lot, but one more thing I did want to mention was that because HB2 also added in teacher retention bonuses for public school teachers, it also says that those retention bonuses can be given to teachers who are contracting with a public school. So teachers who are contracting with the public school also includes pre-K partnership teachers. So there are still some details to work out here, but I did want to mention that because engaging in a pre-K partnership could be an interesting way for you to unlock new funding for teachers. Okay, I see lots of questions in the chat. Sounds like ISDs will be more motivated to find the underserved instead of going after low-hanging fruit, non-eligible to pay tuition. When will the expansion restriction go into effect? Good question. The expansion restriction goes into effect in the 26-27 school year. So a year from now. Can you please send me a copy of SB 599? Yes, we will make sure you get that as well. What is the timeline for rulemaking and how can we stay abreast of specifics? Rulemaking is happening now. We at Child Care Associates are working right now to develop recommendations for rulemaking and for both HB2 and the ESA bill. There's a lot of complexities in the ESA bill that I think the folks who are working on the ESA bill don't even realize. Things like how do providers blend childcare subsidies and an ESA? What does that look like? If you're engaging in a pre-K partnership, can you also get ESAs? So we're working on rulemaking recommendations right now. If you want to set up a meeting with me and share your thoughts, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk through some of this with you. If you want to really get in the weeds, feel free to reach out to me. Jordan can put my email in the chat. I've heard discussions that ISDs will be able to ask for waivers on the limitation to provide pre-K to non-eligible pre-K. Have you heard the same? I do not believe there will be waivers for the tuition-based pre-K. There will be waivers for, districts can get waivers for the 85% pass-through. There is nothing in the bill that states the district can get a waiver around the tuition-based pre-K. That could change in rulemaking, but it typically the bill would need to say waivers could be made available, and it does not say that right now. Okay, great questions. Next slide. Okay, so pivoting back to pre-K partnerships, if pre-K partnerships sound like something that you would be interested in, particularly given the changes that are being made in HB2, You, of course, are always welcome to reach out to your home district to see if they would be engaged. You can also reach out to us and we can work with you to connect you with either your home district or other districts that we're already partnering with to engage in a pre-K partnership. So we'll follow up. Jordan's put in the chat the name of our colleague who is leading the pre-K partnership work, really providing kind of an essential intermediary service between districts and childcare providers to help providers think through, like, does a partnership make sense for me? Help with the negotiation of contracts with the district, help with the blending and braiding of the funding, and really just provide kind of some technical assistance and supports to both providers and the district to engage in pre-K partnership. So if you're interested, feel free to email us. The email is in the chat. It's also on the slide, which we'll send out after the meeting. Next slide. Just a few bills that didn't pass. So we had some great wins. We also had some bills that stopped short. HB 3191 was a big employer childcare omnibus looking at ways to help employers help pay for the cost of childcare for their employees. That fell short. There was a bill I believe we've talked about previously on these calls relating to requiring childcare providers to record and report their capacity and enrollment information. How many open slots do you have, in what classrooms, et cetera. That did not pass. There was a bill that would have enabled special education certifications for providers. Providers could have received these certifications and then received an enhanced reimbursement rate from TRS. That did not pass. And then there was another bill regarding supporting childcare providers to provide training for their employees, which also did not pass. Next slide. And then the last one we wanted to call out was a bill that CCA worked on very heavily, the Child Care Innovation Pilot. This was based off of the Tarrant County pilot that was aimed at increasing the supply and stabilizing childcare businesses by providing foundational funding grants to childcare programs, competitively selected childcare programs. This bill was one of the ones that stalled in committee. We had really strong committee hearings in both the House and the Senate, but ultimately it fell short of advancing to the full chamber. But we were really excited. We had 40 different advocacy organizations, business organizations, bipartisan support for this bill. And so several providers who came down and helped us advocate for it. If you're on this call, thank you so much for all of your support. And we're really thinking about, okay, how can we come back next session, learn from this experience and develop a program that would be a stronger policy solution going forward. We're still really focused on ensuring that childcare providers are financially supported and stabilized and are able to provide their staff with the wages that they need. And are continuing to seek feedback and brainstorm on that. So more to come there as well. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Jordan. What's next?
Thank you, Catherine. That was really awesome. A lot of talking, so I'll give you a little bit of a break. Yeah, we mentioned legislative rulemaking, how these bills are going to interplay in the next couple of months. So yes, ESAs and pre-K partnership, all of the things related to those they're going through rulemaking right now before they can start being implemented. And really what happens during that process is the more vague pieces of legislation, even though those bills are pages and pages long, there's still not all the information that we need. So our agencies, our state agencies, TEA, and the Comptroller's Office will be basically getting all the details down on paper about how these programs are really going to work. So some of the questions that we have are listed here. By no means is this anywhere close to all of the information that we're going to see in these rules. But for example, I think Catherine mentioned it earlier for ESAs. How is that going to interplay with a child care scholarship program? Will families be eligible to receive both? Is there going to be a restriction on you can only have one or the other? Another piece might be data sharing between agencies. How is this all going to be regulated? Who's going to help oversee certain aspects of the program? So more to come there for sure. And with pre-K partnerships, we have quite a few questions still remaining. So one of those is, how are the organizations going to be selected to become a pre-K partnership intermediary? How will that selection process happen? What avenues will TEA go through to find those intermediaries? And then also we're wondering, what does it mean for a district to have a childcare program available for pre-K partnerships? What is that accountability going to look like? And at what point would they actually be eligible to expand in district pre-K? Those are all things that we kind of don't know yet. We'd also want to know, school finance is so complex. We want to make absolutely sure what parts of the student funding is going to be passed through to childcare programs. How much are they really going to be receiving on average? And what does that count for? Like if a district is providing a teacher for the childcare program in a pre-K partnership, does that count as the 85% of funding, or is it really going to be 85% of tangible funds? We want to make sure that there's clarity within the rules there. And also someone asked a question about the waivers, like what circumstances would a district have to be in to be eligible to receive a waiver? We don't know that yet. And lastly, there is a section of HB2 that funds those teacher retention bonuses that Catherine mentioned. Obviously, it would be amazing if TEA were to create rules that make sure that early educators would be included in those. So we'll be watching that very closely to make sure that, childcare programs can receive benefits too. So those are the big rulemaking pieces. And then, like Catherine mentioned, the governor's task force is going to be an amazing opportunity for local childcare programs and local leaders in the early education space to be involved. So that the governor will be appointing those positions soon, and CCA will be monitoring that. And then similar with quad agency, there will be sort of a public comment. Well, I guess technically there's a public comment period for quad agency initiative where they release findings for their regulations, and then anyone can go in and provide their input on how this could affect their businesses, their communities. So there really is a regular cadence of local voices for those agency leaders to hear out. So obviously that's a big way for childcare programs to become engaged. And then linked here or pictured here is the TEA guidance on pre-K partnership childcare program eligibility. So if you're still a little unclear on that, TEA has outlined it pretty well. So I'll provide a link to this. You can take a look and see if you are eligible under the ESA statute. Okay, and so if you're not already aware, Proposition 2, we have a little reminder about this one here. So Proposition 2 was passed last legislative session, and it gave childcare programs or certain childcare programs an exemption on property taxes. Eligible programs were that you have to be TRS rated. You can be entry level, 2, 3, or 4 star, and you have to be serving an average of 20% students receiving CCS scholarships. So if you're eligible, you can submit an application in your yearly taxes to apply for this property tax exemption. So cities and counties went through and approved this exemption at the local level. And last year, Tarrant County approved the exemption at 50%. A lot of other cities and counties across the state approved the exemption at 100%. So CCA, we're going to be going back to Tarrant County and say, hey, when are we planning to increase this up? Has it been effective? Have we seen positive results? Are we ready to get it to 100% as well? So we can give our childcare programs a little bit more of a bump in savings. So as you can see, currently we have 69 providers in Tarrant County that are receiving the property tax exemption. And last year, when we were kind of going through the process, we estimated that about 145 programs in Tarrant County would be eligible. So that means that there could be 76 childcare providers that are eligible but haven't yet applied. So we want to make sure, spread the word. If you think you're eligible, go ahead and apply. It doesn't hurt. It might take you a little bit more paperwork, but it's definitely worth the savings if you end up being eligible. So the deadline was April 30th for 2025, but again, it's never too early to start thinking about applying for next tax year. It is a rolling basis, so you can continue applying even if you don't have a Prop 2 exemption already. We also wanted to note that if you do have the Prop 2 exemption, you only need to re-verify if your TRS certification expires this year or in any coming years. So if your TRS certification says expires in 2025, go ahead and resubmit that application to the Tarrant County Appraisal District. And then lastly, we want to give a quick reminder that family childcare homes are not currently eligible to receive the Prop 2 tax exemption, just because there are existing homestead exemptions available for single family residences. So that's just something to keep in mind. And we'll keep updating you guys. We'll provide more information about how to apply closer to the application deadline. There's a couple of forms that you have to fill out, but otherwise it's pretty simple. And if you have any questions, I will provide you an FAQ from TWC that goes into a little bit more detail about how Proposition 2 works. Are there any questions about Prop 2? I see one from McKinney. My city council in McKinney asked me to figure out how many childcare centers in the city of McKinney would qualify. They aren't ready to bring the exemption up until they know exposure, and they aren't willing right now to do the legwork. I won't qualify, but I want to advocate and get this going in McKinney. So this is awesome. I can't remember exactly, Catherine, where did we get that data on childcare programs?
Yes, great question. It requires a little bit of data crunching, which is it's not all the data is in the same place. So you have to take your TRS data, you have to take your CCS data, because it does require CCS participation. We can, I would suggest probably reaching out to Children at Risk, because I know that they have done a lot of the data analyses and are able to at least have kind of a good assumption of different municipalities and how many providers would be eligible. I can put in the chat who I would recommend reaching out to. You can also reach out to us directly, us being Jordan or myself, and we can try to get you connected with someone who can help you track down the data. It is a bit wonky because there are a lot of factors that go into provider eligibility, and it does change over time. So it's not, I can see why municipalities have been unable to verify it themselves, because it's hard to track down all the data.
Okay. I'm going to save time for a little bit of questions. Oh, I do see a question about Prop 2. What were the qualifications for provider eligibility? So you have to be either TRS entry level or TRS rated, so 3, 4, or 5 star, and you have to be serving a minimum of 20% students receiving subsidies. So basically, out of your entire enrollment, the average enrollment has to have a 20% group of children that are on the CCS program. And we have a little bit of time. If anyone has any questions or comments or thoughts, you can come off of mute and share with us a little bit about how these policies are ringing for you. Like, what are you thinking? How do you feel like this might impact you? We're definitely interested in hearing from you guys.
I will say to Jordan, we'll be sending out just a very brief survey after this. So if you are someone who has a question specifically about ESAs or about pre-K partnerships or the family child care bill regarding the municipality ordinances that we discussed, that'd be a great spot to leave your email and your specific question. That way we have them all in one place and can work on getting back to you all and providing some assistance where we can. So definitely use that feedback survey as well. You're also welcome to come off mute, and I actually see a hand right now. Let's see. Your school name is actually cut off, but it's Louisiana.
Oh,
Preparatory?
Excelsior, is it Excelsior Preparatory? Yes, okay,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes, I see
I'm
it,
really
yeah.
excited or interested to learn more about the pre-K partnerships. When we first opened in 2021, I met with someone to discuss that, and for the reasons that you said today, it kind of didn't seem beneficial, but now it seems it'll be more beneficial for us. We're a small school, but we do big things. I'm a retired principal, and so I've had students that opted not to go to public school and have stayed with me through second grade. I just had to like push my second graders out to go to public school. So basically, the parents have been eating that tuition with me and also paying taxes to Midlothian ISD. And so I plan to email you to really get some specifics about that because I have kids that's been staying with me since 21. And it's always such a small amount, but this year we'll have kinder and first. Um, so I think it sounds more beneficial the way it was now. So I'm interested in learning more about that.
That's great. Yeah, the pre-K partnerships have been a really big focus, at least of ours, for the last few sessions, because we know that providers are interested, families are making a choice to stay in childcare programs for the reasons that you mentioned. And so if they're eligible for pre-K, what a great way to get them access to those services through pre-K partnerships. So
But
definitely reach
my
out. I will say,
question,
oh
I'm
yeah.
sorry. A quick question with that. So my parents, I only have 2 CCMS kids, so we don't really have a big population of low income. We don't qualify for any of the food reimbursements or anything like that. But so for my parents who are, for lack of a better word, affluent, how would that affect them, a pre-K partnership? Because they wouldn't qualify for pre-K.
Mhm.
And then they're just staying in, we're tuition based. And so they're staying. So it almost looks like there's never any help for my parents or for our program. And I have Down syndrome kids. I have kids with cerebral palsy or Williamson syndrome, things like that. And they're staying with me just because of my background, but we're still eating the brunt of that. Like I'm paying for the classes and things like that. So I don't know. There's a lot to consider or a lot to speak with someone about.
Yeah, totally. So we can definitely, not me, I'm not the expert on this, but our team who oversees the pre-K partnership can help you kind of think through, like, does a partnership make sense for you given the population of your students? If they're not eligible for pre-K, then they wouldn't be eligible to draw down resources through a pre-K partnership. It might be beneficial for them to look into an ESA application. Because if they have special needs, they would be able to qualify for an ESA. So that might potentially be a better route for those families. But for pre-K partnerships, you do have to be, the children do have to be eligible for pre-K. And again, income isn't the only qualifier for pre-K. There's a handful of them. So, could be working with the family to just help them understand, like, here are all the things that could qualify you to be pre-K eligible. And you never know, maybe there are some of them who qualify a different way outside of income.
Yeah, I know what they are. Yeah. I'm a retired principal, so I know what they are. We don't meet those criteria. I may have one, ESL student that could meet it, but okay. Well, that's just kind of our dilemma, and I'll email you guys because this has been like an ongoing thing. Each year, we're keeping all the kids who are opting to stay. The parents are paying tuition without support from the district, which we know the funding is going there through taxes and other things like that. So.
And Catherine, nationally, the wind is at our back in terms of beginning to honor parent choices, regardless of the setting that parents are choosing. I mean, obviously, Texas had some legislation passed, but there's a lot of guidance going out to state child care administrators and others about how can we make this easier, that parents, no matter what they're choosing, they can choose the place that works best for their family and their child. Right now, it's a little bit of a Rube Goldberg machine. Remember that mousetrap game where you're just like, dear Lord, trying to figure it all out. And I really want to give a shout out just to Catherine and Jordan for their efforts to kind of help legislators understand that it is still a major Rube Goldberg machine for families and for providers trying to figure this all out. So you guys are right to be loud and proud on saying, like, we've got to simplify this and make that easier, and also put resources behind families' choices. So more work to come.
Okay. Great conversations. I wanted to give a little shout out to our LinkedIn and our newsletter. We post frequently on our LinkedIn about new policy updates, a lot of things that we've shared here, as well as going into a little bit more depth on some of the policies. We have a little series on pre-K partnerships that we're doing right now. So definitely follow us and connect with us on LinkedIn, and then sign up for our newsletter too. We don't do any spam. We do newsletters about once every other month. So hopefully they have robust information. As you can see here, this was our last one on the 89th session. So you can have everything in print in a very short, easy to follow format. So, and I also wanted to say we're working on a blog post that will go into even more depth on the childcare bills that we talked about today. So be on the lookout for that. You can scan the QR code and find all of our websites, our LinkedIn, our blog, everything linked in one place. And then we wanted to take a second to say happy Juneteenth. Juneteenth is tomorrow, and we are just really happy to be able to commemorate the end of slavery in the United States and honor the strength and perseverance of Black Americans. And so we hope you're able to take some time to relax and celebrate this tremendous new federal holiday. That's it. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this session was helpful. I'll be sending a follow-up email with all of the information. Make sure to take our feedback survey and tell us what you're interested in learning more about so that we can give you the best information for you and your organization. Thank you so much.